This represents an empty calendar. And this represents a typical day. Green areas are areas for sleep, for rest, maybe for health. Purple areas are for social, for family time, for interaction with others. Orange is time for thinking, for reflection, for yourself, maybe for some reading, or there could also be relaxation. And then blue is blocks for work, where you do actual work. So this is a typical day. You get up at 7, you're at work at 9, you go home at 5, you have dinner with family, maybe you relax. If you're very diligent, you study a bit in the evening, you relax a bit more, and then you go to sleep. But actually, that's not what it looks like anymore. This is usually what a day now comes down to. You still sleep, but then from as soon as you wake up, you also start to work because people have their phones. And so then you get this pattern of like work, private, because private also comes into work. Maybe you check private emails, you get WhatsApp messages. So it's all mixed up, and then your work is also even divided in little chunks because people are working on 5 or 10 different projects at the same time. And this kind of goes through the whole day, and you'll notice that the orange areas are completely gone because there's no time for reflection or study or things like that. People are just constantly going back and forth between work and private, and it's all kind of mixed up together. And then at some point, this all goes on until we go to bed for a lot of people. This is what a day should look like. And you don't have to take it too literally. It's not saying you have to get up at 7 or you have to go to bed exactly at 11 or you should always take a break at exactly this time. But it's an example of what an ideal day these days would look like. So it's much more structured again, kind of like this day, but it's structured quite differently because you spend more time thinking, focusing, doing complicated work, and you spend a bit less time on manual labor tasks, or however you want to call it. You put more breaks in between. You also spend some time on reflection. Maybe you work a bit again in the evening. That's fine, but it's a very clear block, and then you go to sleep. And so we could say that this is how life actually used to be. Working 9 to 5, everything very structured, dinner, go to bed on time. This is how life really is currently. It's a total mess. And this is how life actually should be. And it shouldn't just be because I think so, or because somebody else said so. It's based on science. And as you can see here, this structure comes forth out of a lot of books and research. Some examples are Deep Work, Brain Change, and Hamlet's BlackBerry. So for the modern world and where we are headed, this is actually how a good day would be structured. But this is actually how life really is, and this is how it used to be, which is kind of even a leftover from the industrial area with industrial age with 40-hour work weeks. And so if we look at these different eras, you could say that when things were like this, we were using these type of tools and these type of objects. And now that life is like this, we are using these tools and these services. And actually, it's not a coincidence. These tools actually kind of build a fence from, these tools build a fence from going from there to there. The way that these objects and these products and these things work actually ensured that the calendar looked like this. And because of how this technology works, our days actually look like this. So it's not that we like to work like this or that we like to be like this. It is actually that these tools and the things we used made our calendars and our agendas and our lives look like this. And because we're using this, it actually looks like this. And this is a very important observation because most people feel trapped now over here. And what they try to do is they want to break free. And they either might have heard of the promised land over here, so they try to go there, or more likely, a lot of people think that things should still be like this. So people try to go in either one of these directions based on their willpower, but they cannot, because you cannot break through this. Very few people can break through this with willpower, because it's actually the tools that we are using that keep us stuck here. It's nothing else. It's not because we don't want to. We know that we want to be either over there or at the very least be back here. Nobody wants to really be here. I think that's pretty obvious for most people now. But no matter how hard we try, and that's what most people assume, that it takes willpower, we cannot get out of this. And actually, most people are actually trying to move in this direction, which is not possible because these tools are gone. So you're never going to end up here. So we should be moving in this direction, but most people don't even know about this promised land. And if they know, it's still very hard because our tools are holding us back. And then to make matters worse, these people here are actually making money from the situation being like this, especially Facebook, but to a lesser extent also Apple and of course YouTube and WhatsApp. They make money from us being distracted and living in this way and constantly checking our Facebook and checking videos during our work. So they actually have an incentive to keep things like this. And that's exactly what's happening. And so we need to dig through to help people get to the promised land. And this is actually what Saent is about. And this is what most other tools don't see, and why Saent is very different. Because we're actually trying to help people to get to this promised land and helping them to restructure their day in a way that does work and that does lead to fulfillment and happiness. And that's what we're trying to do. So with our tools, we're trying to rebuild this foundation. Just like our current tools rebuild the structure of our current days that are totally messed up, and that these tools facilitated this structure of the day, we're trying to build new tools that help us get to this kind of structure of the day. And that's, of course, what this arrow. The tools lead to how we live our lives. It's not the other way around. It's how, of course, how we use them, but it's also how they are built and how they are structured. So in a way, we're trying to hack the current technology to get to this place over here. And each of the products we're building is a beacon within that promised land. So we're starting with the button, and the button really relates to this part here, to just doing work at your computer. And so it's a first beacon, so people who can relate to this are attracted by this beacon. But in reality, it's to bring them over here to the promised land. And here's another part of the day where the button really can help and really applies. But then the box, the second product we're planning, applies to a very different part of the day and to a different type, different aspect of your life. It has more to do with the social aspect, but which is just as important, and the relaxing aspect. So we're building these products as beacons to draw people to the promised land, basically. And as we do that, we create apostles. This is an apostle. And an apostle is more than just word of mouth. Word of mouth is, of course, nice. But this is, once you move here, you will never go back. You don't want to go back. So life here is so good that once you are here, you will start to tell other people over here about it, that they can also make it across the fence and come over here. And so these products, and basically what we're doing is trying to build these apostles and make life so good over here that people don't want to go back, and they realize how much better it is. And that way we create more and more apostles. But that's also why we need to start with the groups that are most naturally drawn to this type of day. Because for a programmer or a designer, it's much easier to structure their day in this way than, for example, a manager or a salesperson. And eventually they can also come over here. But this type of day is much more naturally suited to a programmer or a designer, for example. So that's why those should be the first people we get over there, but then they become the apostles that help other people come over there. And so basically we're building tools to kind of hack the system and get past the fence. And it doesn't have to be exclusively done by us. We can also cooperate with other apps that fit this area. But the issue is, and why we're different, is that most people are building apps and are building solutions for either one of these two realities, which either are not what we want over here, or they are just, from another era, and we're never going to end up back here because time moves from left to right. And then the last but not least is that this is where we are headed, and so we are preparing for that, because in the future, you will notice that the blue parts are completely gone, because those will be taken over by robots and automation, or most of it. So it's much more likely that our days will look something like this, where it's actually all coming down to thinking, doing deep, complicated thinking work, studying and learning, and hopefully having more time to relax. So this is actually where it's headed, and we're putting people on the way to there, and we are building the new tools to facilitate that. And that's what really makes Saent different from everything else out there.